USA Today's best-selling and award-winning author, Siera London, crafts tales with a message to heal the heart and soul. From contemporary to paranormal, Siera weaves stories with heroines you know, heroes you love, and romance that you feel. When not writing, Siera roams with Mr. Awesome and Frey, her cat muse. And Siera is a retired Navy veteran and a Jacksonville native. So give it up for Siera. And today, Siera will be joined in conversation with a local author, Jessica Hatch. So, give it up for Siera. So Jessica has a passion for writing genre-blind, character-first fiction with a love of words and a strong beating heart. Her work has appeared in publications such as Writer's Digest, The Millions, Fast Company, Neutral Spaces, and Shirley Magazine, and she hosts the virtual reading series Comp Title Book Club. Her freshman and sophomore novels were published by Hachette's UK's Bookouture imprint, and her debut novel, My Big Fake Wedding, was A Lonely Victory's book of 2022, and it appeared in the top 50s women's fiction and top 100 romantic comedy titles on Amazon. But before becoming an author, Jessica worked and interned in New York trade publishing institutions, Writers House, and St. Martin's Press. She lives in Jacksonville, Florida with her lovely family. So I will leave the rest for Jessica.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. First off, I love a hometown crowd. This is so exciting. And also, may I just say, such a well-dressed hometown crowd. There's so many gorgeous outfits out here today. So thank you all for making it. Siera, I'm so happy to be having this chat with you.
And I'm happy that we're having it.
Yeah. So let's just kind of start at a baseline for anyone who hasn't gotten around to your latest novel yet. Okay. Can you give us briefly an overview of Fake It Till You Make It?
Oh, okay. That's hard because I love this book.
The pitch is always so hard.
Yes, the pitch is hard. But Fake It Till You Make It is a small town romance about a down on her luck city girl who has just reached her limit with life, with her fiance, with where she is in life, where she is in her career, and she decides that she's ready for a new beginning. And she packs up the car and she takes off, ready to take on life, and the car breaks down 4 hours into her new beginning. Okay? And like any good woman, she decides to bloom where she's planted, and so she takes the only job, she goes to get the only job in the county bulletin, because it's small town West Virginia, and it's working for a grumpy vet, Eli Calvary. So that's when you meet the rest of the Calvary family.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. Amarie Walker and Eli Calvary are our couple in this book, and there's so much to love. The car's name is Prince, after rest in peace, Prince.
Yes.
It's so good, so good. And this, I have to admit, this was my first Siera London title. It won't be my last.
Thank you.
But did you grow up reading romance? Like, have you always wanted to write this genre, or did you have the writing bug and the genre came later?
Yeah. So actually, none of that.
Okay.
So my mom loved. That's my mom right there,
Hi,
y'all.
Mom.
That's my mom.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
She loved what we used to call love funny books. You know, they were animated books, but they were like romance stories, right? And so I did read those. Not that she offered them to me, but I would find them in stacks, and I would read those. But I actually started off really falling for just reading in general because I was a latchkey kid. Like, both my parents worked, and I actually spent a lot of time at the Jacksonville Public Library downtown. And when my mom was working, there were very few places I could go, right? As a latchkey kid, you go home, you let nobody in, right? You don't talk to nobody. But I could go to the library and stay there until she picked me up. Mm-hmm. And that really just kind of fueled my love of books. And how I fell for romance was romance would always take my mind away. It was literally an escape for me.
Yes.
And I read it a lot at work. I worked as a pediatric nurse practitioner, very, very stressful, saving babies, going to deliveries. And on my lunch break, I would read to just kind of recenter, calm down. and then get back to work.
Yes, yeah. You know, I was just having a conversation before we got started with an audience member talking about finding the time to write and the escapism of it. You know,
Yes.
I was like, you know, after work and household responsibilities and maybe a little bit of self-care, and they said, well, isn't the writing sort of some self-care? And I feel like also just the reading and the escapism of this genre. I think romance gets given this small potatoes kind of reputation, but it's so important because women and other people who read romance are out there doing big things like being pediatric NPs, and you know, you need a break.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think the beautiful thing about romance is you know what you're going to get. You know that you don't know what the story's going to be, but at the end of it, you know that you're going to feel good about the journey that you've been on with these characters. And for me, that's what I still need. Like, I still enjoy at the end of a hard day, picking up a romance novel and going on this journey with these characters, laughing with them, crying with them, but knowing at the end of that journey, they're going to be somewhere that's satisfying for them as well as for me as the reader. Yeah.
Yep. So you mentioned just now being a pediatric nurse practitioner. You're also a military veteran. Mm-hmm. And I wondered if those two elements and aspects of your life influenced Fake It Till You Make It. Because Eli, the male main character, is a U.S. Army. Well, he's a veteran and he's a veterinarian, so he's both kind of vets. I liked that wordplay a little bit. So, you know, did that influence that decision in that character or anything else about this novel?
Always.
Yep.
Always. I think it's very hard to separate like the woman from the military from the woman. Like it still shapes who I am as a person. And it's not something that you see very often in literature. And what I mean by that is you see military heroes, but everybody can't be a SEAL. Everybody can't be a ranger, right? And you see that over and over and over again. For those of us who serve, you know, like, we're literally a small town in and of ourselves, right? There's a little bit of everybody. There's somebody who delivers the mail. There's someone that takes care of the food, that makes sure we eat. There's somebody that keeps the ship running. There's someone that's, you know, doing biomed stuff in the hospital. There's administrators in the hospital. Like, we have a little bit of everything in the military, but you don't always see that represented in literature. And I think it's important that we see ourselves in literature. So I try to, oftentimes in my book, bring in different aspects of military life.
Awesome. Oh, thank you for your service. Yeah.
It was an honor.
And I did also want to, I'm an animal lover. So of course, I mean, like, look at how cute this golden retriever is. That's not just there for the book cover. This dog is a character in the book.
Yes.
And I love all the guest appearances we get. We get Hiccup. We get this really grouchy cat named Adele. Like, we get some great like farm animal stuff going on. And that's all through the lens of Eli and his family's veterinary clinic. So. Yeah. Going to pivot a little bit from animals and ask, from a romance lens, what is it about men who have a soft spot for animals that makes them so dang attractive?
Ooh, well, there's a lot to find attractive about the fellas, but when you throw in the pets, I think it's cool to see, well, I think it's very sexy, to see a man care for something, whether it's caring for, you know, like a single dad romance, caring for his kids, caring for his pets, but that nurturing aspect. Because again, it's not something, especially in American culture, that is often lauded, but at home, like we women who share our space with the man, like we appreciate the care that they put into things, right? Yep. But it's not always an aspect that we celebrate. You know, the rugged man with the big truck and the, you know, the mud and the wheels. But it's nice when they can scoop up the cat or, you know, and go, you need to be here, not here, sitting on everything, or care for the dog. So I think you see a lot of that with the Calvary men in general, because you meet the brothers. So it's Eli, this is his story, but there's also Noah and Tobias, but you meet them in the context of family because their dad is passed on, and you meet them with their mom, Leah. And so you get to see this mother-son dynamic as well play out in the book. Yeah. And again, not always what you see as much. You see women with their daughters, happy Mother's Day, for all the mothers in the room, but you see women with their daughters, but not always with their sons, and that dynamic. And it's something that I wanted to explore in the story.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to hear you talk about the other Calvary men, because it sounds like maybe they'll get their own stories down the line. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you're right. Like the mother-son relationship in this book is very special. On top of being like emotionally resonant, this book has so many funny parts. We got an audience laugh when you mentioned Prince breaking down 4 hours into her runaway. I remember laughing so hard. Early in the book, there's a scene where Amarie kind of proves herself to Eli as an employee by cat whispering the grouchy cat, Adele. It's so funny. And then there's also lines like, quote, Mrs. Klein had toppled Amarie's blissful existence faster than Oprah's Harry and Meghan interview.
Yes.
End quote. Book funny, gotta say that, but what is your favorite sort of humor to write? Do you physical comedy, super complicated to write. Do you like situational humor, the quips and the one-liners, something else?
Yes. So
All
dialogue is kind of my thing. I love it when you get the characters together and hear what they have to say, because I don't plot that out. It comes to me as I'm watching them in my head, right? So I don't always know what they're gonna say, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a good one. I'm loving it. I'm let me write that down before I forget, right? Because sometimes my characters will say things, and I'm like, that is so good. I'm going to repeat that in real life, right? So definitely situational. Once they get together and they start talking, that's when, to me, the story really starts to come alive in my head. Because oftentimes I'll see my characters, or I'll see a message that I want to put into the world, right? So when I think about Fake It Till You Make It, it's about two people who are overwhelmed with life, right? Some of it is of their own making, but some of it is stuff that's out of their control. And I think that's something that we all can relate to. There are times in life where you're like, how did I get here? But even more so, how am I gonna get out of it, because I can't stop, right? I can't be still. I can't afford to stand still. And so that's where you find Eli and Amarie. They're both at a place in their life that if they stop, not only their lives burn down, but people who are dependent on them, that are relying on them. And so they have to keep pushing forward. So it was a message that at the time that I really wanted to unpackage through these characters.
Yeah. And the characters, it's billed as Grumpy meets Sunshine. So, they have very different ways of approaching life, having them in a corner. Yes. Eli starts the book very ordered, very military veteran, no nonsense. And Amarie is very charismatic. I feel like she's talented to boot. She has the skills to back up things that she says, but she just has this charismatic way with people. Yeah. So I wonder, are your character's strengths a mix of your own strengths?
Wouldn't that be lovely?
Yeah, I know, just having all the strengths. But do you relate more to Eli's way of approaching problem solving or Amarie's? Neither one's a wrong answer.
Right. And yes and no. In that, what I love about Amarie, when you meet her, she's on the cusp of changing directions. Right? You see her in action. And I love that, because most women really don't have an opportunity to slow down. It doesn't matter if it's at work or at home. You come in the door, you already got a plan. I need to do this. And Amarie is kind of like that, even though she's walking a path that is not fully illuminated to her, right? Like she really doesn't know this fresh start. She doesn't have all the answers. She don't really have no money. Prince is broken down. You know, this was supposed to be her security. And so all these things are like just being snatched away, no matter what she does. So in some ways I go, yeah, I can see myself in Amarie because you don't know what life's gonna throw at you, but you have to keep moving, right? But Eli, okay.
Yeah.
All right, you know, I have to love my military hero because, okay, I'm married to a military man, and we have a battle rhythm at home, right? Like, he gets up 2 hours before me. By the time I get up, like, the house is light, all the curtains are open, like, breakfast is done. Like, he's got a battle rhythm, I have a battle rhythm. Eli has a battle rhythm, right? And Amarie shows up, and even though she's the only person applying for this job, y'all, she didn't schedule no interview. He don't even want to interview her. Like, he need to hire somebody. She the only person that applied, but he's like, you didn't call ahead of time. You didn't book an interview. And she's like, you have got to be joking me. Like, but he's not. But he's not. And so he's the character I feel like that has to grow the most. But I can see that in myself too. Like, there's areas in my life where I'm not as flexible, and I'm very much like, this is my battle rhythm and I want to stick to it, and life is going, no, you need to course correct. You need to change course and speed. So I can see myself in both characters.
That's so relatable. I like that phrase, battle rhythm.
Yes.
Also, you know, maybe if you and your husband could run a boot camp for my husband, who's the Amarie in the relationship. And meanwhile, I'll work on being more flexible. So, you know, this novel is set in a fictional small town, correct? Of Service, West Virginia. And there's I love the main characters, but I also love all the supporting characters in this book, y'all. There's a clear sense of community. And I think it seems to me from your backlist that you build these great fictional worlds. Like, I think about, I looked a bit at your backlist, and there's a series called Bachelors of Cove. Again, I assume a fictional location that you created, you world built here. So how much planning do you do for like who makes up the little, like you were talking about with a military base, the small town of Service, West Virginia? Did you think about who the characters would be, what responsibilities, how the town is laid out, and what jobs and services there are? Like, or does that just come to you the way that dialogue comes to you?
A little bit of both, but this book was different. So this book was actually born out of a road trip. So
Hopefully no car breakdown, right?
No,
okay.
The car did not break down, thank you. But my husband and I, we were on a road trip. It was Sunday, and on Sundays, because we old folks, we go for a Sunday drive. And so we were up in Virginia, and we drove and ended up in West Virginia, Harper's Ferry. And Harper's Ferry is absolutely beautiful. I mean, and as we drove, and it was during the pandemic, and as we drove, I could feel kind of that hectic pace of the city melt away. Okay, so we live really close to DC, like 8 miles away. Y'all, nothing slows down. We hear noise at our house. Even though we live in a neighborhood, we hear noise 24/7. There's always something going on. So even when you're trying to relax, there's something that just kind of keeps you alert when you live in the city, and it's always buzzing. And so we're in the car and we're driving. We end up in West Virginia, the land of waterfalls. I mean, it is absolutely green. The architecture is breathtaking. The antique shops, the cobblestone roads, the little footpaths over the creeks. It's just beautiful. And I said to myself, even before I said to my husband, I said, I want to capture this in a book. Like, how do I capture this feeling of just kind of letting go and just flowing like the water and just getting lost in the greenery and all the colors? How do I capture that in a book? And so the setting came to me first. Then Eli and his family came to me second. I was like, what kind of men would live here? what kind of men would live here in this town that I overlaid on Harper's Ferry, and what would they do? What would connect them most to the community? And if you've been there, like we got there and we started running low on gas, how far we had to drive to find a gas station? All I know is it wasn't anywhere close in the town where we were. Like we had to drive a little bit to get there, and then we had to drive a little bit more to find like food. And I'm like, okay. So this community has to be very self-sufficient. And that's how the Calvary family homestead was born. And then you see the farmer right up the mountainside. That's how it was born.
Okay, that's great. That's really cool. I love the inspiration. And then from there, you just kind of like took it and ran. Were there lists involved or just kind of like?
So one of my girlfriends, her and her partner came over to the house, and he was supposed to be dropping her off. And I was trying to draw out the town, like what I thought it looked like in my head. And I was talking it out loud, and he's like, oh, that sounds so cute. I used to draw. I said, here's your assignment, right? Here's some. You need crayons or you need colored markers. So if you could get to sketching this town, that would be great. And so by the time they left, I had the little town laid out, and then I had to start naming stuff.
Awesome. You outsourced. I love how you said he thought he was dropping her.
Yes, he thought he was dropping her off. Like, here you go.
Here's your assignment. That's so great. What was your favorite scene to write in Fake It Till You Make It?
Oh my gosh. I think my favorite scene is with the three goats. Billy, Jean, and Diana. That's the goats, Billy, Jean, and Diana. So I think that's my favorite scene to write because you also meet, so Hiccup is in the car. That's Eli's dog, Hiccup, named after what's going on in Eli's life, right? He's got some hiccups going on. And you meet the three goats, which Amarie met them when the car broke down because they were judging her. They kept looking at her in her raggedy car on the side of the road. And then the mechanic comes along, who's also the sheriff. Yep. And he has his little dog with him, Cocktail, who's a mutt, so his name is Cocktail. And he's got on his little mechanic jacket, like he's got a little vest with all the little tools in it to help him fix the car. So I think that's my favorite scene.
That's
with,
awesome.
With Cocktail and Hiccup, and they're kind of dating, you know?
Yeah.
So they got this little vibe going on, little puppy vibe going on, and the three goats.
Awesome. Awesome. So I will say today's romance market, and there's nothing wrong with this, is incredibly spicy. You know, like I feel like spicy books are valued. There is a touch of spice to Fake It Till You Make It. Some really nice spice, if I do say so myself, but it's a slow burn. Yes. Like as the reader, you have to earn it, you know? And I love that. I feel like personally, for as much as a spicy read can be great, the tension that you get from a slow burn. Like there's this one part where Amarie is being lifted out of Eli's truck by Eli like she is a feather, you know, like just, you talk about a man nurturing something and caring for somebody, and they haven't even like really discussed any sort of romantic entanglement at this point. There's just like,
Yes.
you know, and right? Like you don't get that kind of tension if you just start sexy out of the gate. There's nowhere to go because you went sexy right out of the gate. So, you know, when it comes to the romantical scenes, do you like plan those out? Do those kind of just like come to you like dialogue? Sorry, I keep going back to, because I'm such a plotter. I'm not so much of a pantser, so I'm always like intrigued to hear other people's processes.
Yes. No, I do not plan those out, and they take me the longest to write. Actually, the intimate scenes take me the longest to write. I will usually write the whole book and go back and put like this long yellow bar and go, insert romantic scene here, insert romantic scene here. So they take a lot of time for me because I don't write, especially in this series, like I struggle to write really graphic scenes like that, like really graphic, intimate scenes. And so it takes me like some music and maybe the right drink. I don't drink alcohol, but you know, a real strong Pepsi with some extra ice cubes in it. But it takes me, it takes me like getting in the right place to connect emotionally with the character. Like, what would a woman feel if a man touched her in this place or that place, or he held her face a certain way, or when that first press of his lips to hers? Like, what would that feel like? What would go through your head? And so it takes me a while to slow down and really connect with that. Like I said, move the cat out the way, slow down the battle rhythm, get everything right. And so, but what I wanted with this book, because I had been writing higher heat books for several years now, but what I really wanted with this book, I wanted you to have enough time with the characters to fall in love with everybody. I wanted you to love Eli. I wanted you to love Amarie. I wanted you to love his brothers. I wanted you to love his mom. I wanted you to love the neighbors. I wanted you to say, man, if service existed, I would love to visit there and spend time with these folks. And so it takes time to kind of layer that in, because what you see in a scene, I may not see in a scene, right? And so it takes time to build in those little details like you were talking about. To really connect. For you as the pet. For someone else, it might be Anne-Marie and her obsession with purple, which Eli thinks is crazy. He's like, she's a maniac. What's with all that purple? So, it's little things like that, pull different folks into the story.
The details. I'm not spoiling anything here, but when we find out why purple and why she always has her nails done a different way.
Yes.
It was like, okay, like unlocked a whole new facet of this character.
Yes.
You do fall in love with these characters, absolutely.
Right.
I think that's so smart to do the romance scene to come, because then you as an author, you get at least the first draft out, and you understand where each of them are coming from a little bit deeper than if you tried to write it and you don't even know how their story ends yet.
Right.
That's so smart.
Yeah, because you, like, as a reader, like, you read the book, you consume it really, really fast, right? Like, it may take me, 6 months to write this book, and you read it in 6 hours, but you'll never know as much about the characters as I do, right? Like, I'm always gonna know a lot more about these characters than whatever will make it in a book, because this one book would be, a 10-book series if I wrote everything I know about Anne-Marie. But trying to pick out the details about Anne-Marie or Eli that you can relate to. It's kind of like me as a person. Like, I got this thing for chunky bracelets. People ask me, like, why do you wear them? Because I feel like I have to be my own Wonder Woman. So I always have on a big chunky bracelet. This is my Wonder Woman bracelet. And so you get those little details like that about Anne-Marie, as well as you read the book. Like, why does she do what she does? Right? Anyway, y'all figure it out.
No, that's...
Yeah.
That made sense.
Okay.
I love that about your chunky bracelets. That's so cool. Let's see. We talked a little bit about grumpy sunshine. And I do think there's a line you can toe with grumpiness. You do a good job of making Eli like actually grumpy, not just like lovable curmudgeon, just 40 years too early. I feel like a lot of times grumpy is just a guy who should be like, aged up and wearing a cardigan. But Eli is like actually grumpy. But he's not, like, he doesn't have anger issues. There aren't red flags there. So, like, how do you toe that line to, like, make it authentically meet the bill of what he's supposed to be like without, like, going too far over and potentially alienating readers,
For Eli in particular, and thank you for that, but for Eli in particular, I think it's so important to understand why he is the way he is, why he behaves the way he behaves. And you learn that when you first meet him. Like, his first line in the book is, if it wasn't for family relations, Eli would fire his mother. So you already know, like, there's something going on between him and mom. And I don't wait to show you that. Like, in that scene, you meet his mother, and they have this dialogue around, of course, the kitchen table, because so much of family life happens around the kitchen table. And so they have this dialogue, and you understand why he may not be in the best mood, not just in that moment dealing with his mom, but just the place he's in life. Like you get that up front. So I think the readers are more tolerant of Eli because you know why he is grumpy, and probably a lot of people can relate. Like he's got, he's been taken,
But he's got a lot going on.
Yes.
So we were talking a little bit before we got started, and you were saying that it was kind of a refreshing moment to write something lighter. So let's talk for a second about where this novel sits in your body of work. Like, what was refreshing about creating this new space and inventing these characters? And this is kind of like a 3-part question. So answer whatever you want to of it. I realize I'm throwing questions at you
Okay.
rapid fire here. So what was refreshing about it? You kind of hinted at this, but like, will there be more books set in Service, West Virginia? And then are there Easter eggs to your other books that readers who are like familiar with your body of work would be like, oh, I recognize that person, or, oh, I recognize that?
Yes. Okay, you're right. That's a loaded question. Okay,
So many. I'm so sorry.
Let's unpack it. So this is my 41st published book. Okay.
Can we all hold on?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah,
It's awesome.
So it's my 41st published book, but it's the first of my books that was picked up by a large New York publishing house. So it's like the first one to hit shelves, like bookshelves across the country. So yeah. So yes, absolutely, more books are coming for the Calvary family. So I'm working on Noah's book now, and Tobias will get his book, because they are men of service. So Eli is a vet, Noah is a firefighter, and Tobias is an EMT. So they are men of service, even though they live in a town called Service. And so I literally love what they do. Like, I just love the role that they serve in the community, So I enjoy spending time with them, and Service is beautiful. Like, even in my head when I picture it, it's just a beautiful place. And the Calvary homestead backs up to Landing Falls, this beautiful waterfall that flows through the back of the property. And, it's just a beautiful place to be. But so before this, I've written, I want to say, six mafia novels set in like a John Wick story world. My hotel is called The Governor. It's an AI hotel that can protect itself. And that storyline started with, I love John Wick, by the way. Okay, I could watch it every day of the week. I'm just saying that. John Wick is a personal friend of mine. We spend a lot of time together. So I asked myself the question, what would it be like if John Wick's wife didn't die? What if he met the woman he was supposed to be with and he had to fight to keep her? And that's how I call the series The Protectors of the Governor was created. But I stumbled upon writing mafia romance. I'd never written that dark before, y'all. Never written that dark before. But I got invited to a group project, and they was like, Siera, everybody's writing mafia, so you don't have to write mafia, you gotta leave the small town behind. I was like, I do? And they was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, let me figure out how I'm gonna make this work. Well, those books turned out being like my best sellers, like this mafia romance. I was like, oh my gosh, a mafia queen, who knew? So I kept writing them, but to write mafia romance, you got to go some dark places, right? There's always some bloodshed. There's always some bullets. And at the time, I just wanted to write something different because I needed something lighter. And Service was born on that trip. Like that beautiful place, that calming place that John Wick will probably visit at some point in my book. My John Wickish characters will probably visit, because in the last mafia book I wrote, when they needed to escape the city, where did they end up? Not in Service, but in West Virginia. And so, I leave little threads like that slowly connect my books. It's usually not obvious. It's that Easter egg you're talking about, where you have to hunt for it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That made me break into a sweat. Just
yeah. Just up here giving you the third degree about all your books. I'm sorry. We're good, right?
Yeah, we're
okay,
good.
cool. I've got some softballs after that. You've earned some softballs before we open it up to the audience. You've published in both spaces now, as you talk about. This was your first trade published book. Yeah. What are your favorite parts of each type? There are pros and cons to self-publishing and to trade publishing. So
my first 40 books I published myself through my own publishing house, and I love the autonomy of that. Just being able to control what my covers look like, the titles, every bit of the storyline. But at the same time, I wanted to challenge myself to grow in a different direction. Meaning, could I write a book that was appeal to a mass market, right? But also follow somebody else's instruction. Like, take my work, see what you see, what can we do to make it even better? And I have enjoyed the experience. I can say, so my publisher is Grand Central Publishing, or Hachette, and they have been wonderful to work with. When I got the initial cover for this, my Eli, he was sitting on the ground and he had on yellow pants. I said, Eli doesn't have time to sit on the ground, and he definitely don't wear yellow pants. That's not gonna work. That's not the man that he is. And I said, he got on white tennis shoes on the way to the farm. Really? That's not Eli. And so my publisher, she and my editor, she came back and she said, send me your vision of what these characters look like. Boy, she didn't know what she was asking. I had a whole Pinterest board with their cars, what they ate, their bedrooms, their bathrooms, character images, everything. And when they came back with this cover, I said, now that is Eli Calvary, and that's Amarie's vibe. So for me, so awesome. It was absolutely wonderful. But I think the other thing is, a publisher, they have relationships with booksellers that, as an independent author, unless you're selling like millions of copies, you're really just not going to have. Right. And I'm very proud to say, this book was picked up as Walmart's must-read for May, and Walmart ordered 46,000 copies of my book. So, yeah, I could not have done that myself. So, yeah.
That's so I'm so happy for you and this next phase. This is awesome. And so on that note, I'm sure everyone here wants to know what you're working on next. It sounds like it's going to be book 2 in this series, but can you tell us anything more about it? You've told us a little bit about who it's going to be about, but do we have a sense of what the plot is going to be? So
book 2 is Noah Calvary's story, and if you've read the story, y'all know Noah is a huge flirt, and he is very cocky, but he also is in love with the girl next door, the farmer's daughter. And so finally the farmer's daughter comes home.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit this is Shakespeare's worst title, but it sounds a bit Taming of the Shrew, but maybe she's going to tame him a little bit.
Yes, yeah. Very much.
That's awesome. Very cool.
So, yes.
Thank you for answering all of my questions, both hard and softball. Yes. And I think now we're going to open it up to audience questions.
You would be correct. So we are going to open it up for an audience question first. Thanks to Siera and Jessica for such a wonderful conversation thus far. But if you are in our audience and you have a question, you can write it down on the little note cards in your clipboards, and we have a volunteer and I who will be picking it up. If you're in our Zoom audience and you'd like to ask a question, you can submit it through the Q&A chat, and we did have an early bird, so I already have one question in my hand. So I will go ahead and pass it along to Jessica, and we will get started.
All right. Okay. Oh, what does a day of writing look like for you?
Oh, all right. That's a good question. So it's changed recently. So prior to Eli and Amarie's book, I would say I would spend maybe 10 hours a day writing, focused on story, working my business, because I'm a pretty fast writer, right? So on average, I can write about 6 or 7 books a year, like full-length books.
Wow.
If they're short, I can write a short book, like 100 words in a couple of weeks. But I had some vision loss last year, so now I'm low vision, so I do more dictation now. And I dictate maybe about an hour, and then it may take me several hours to go back and slow down and clean up the dictation so I can actually understand what I said. So I work maybe 4 hours a day now because my eyes need more time to rest, and the lights really bother, like from the screen, the blue light and stuff like that. So about 4 hours a day now.
That's still amazing. Just every part of what you said, 10 hours a day. Mm-hmm. That was incredible. And just also the fact that you're like, hey, I've hit this roadblock, but I'm not going to let it stop me or slow me down, frankly. 4 hours a day of writing is still incredible, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Let's look at some more of these questions. Why did you start the first chapters with Mom Leah posting an auction of so a big plot point in this is that there's like a fun charity auction of the hot men in this town. So why did you start the first chapters with the mom Eli Calvary posting an auction of the brothers? Was this her way to help them find women or to help the family business? Mom, what are you doing?
So if you notice, in both these chapters, I started with the women in action. So Amarie getting her fresh start, and Mama Calvary, Leah is not sitting back on her laurels. She's like, we need money. I know how to get money. I got 3 good-looking boys right here, and none of y'all are hooked up. So Eli is very much like, Mama, don't be selling us off to the nearest mountain woman here. I'm gonna figure this out. So yes, and yes to both of those.
That's amazing. And also I love, one of my favorite parts about that scene, you're like, it takes place around the kitchen table. I'm like, no, she's bribing him with one of his favorite foods.
Yes.
Let's see. When did you write your first book? Can you tell us about how your career as an author started? I got a little bit of this story from Cedric before we got started. I want to hear your take on it.
Yeah, so I started writing while I was still on active duty. I had an idea for one book, and I started writing it on my lunch break on a yellow legal pad. I was stationed at Naval Medical Center in San Diego. I had an idea for this one book about a nurse, of course, and I started writing it, and the secretary, she would read it. And she was like, oh my gosh, what's the next chapter? It was like a soap opera. I was like, oh, this is like Young and the Restless. It's so great. And it was based in a hospital. So perfect, right? Bold and Beautiful, Young and the Restless. I watched all those soap operas. A lot of us got our romance genes from the soap operas, right? So big family, old money in a hospital setting. That was the Bachelors of Cove. But it started on my lunch break. It took me, I started writing that book in 2013. Mm-hmm. I pitched it to agents in 14. I got some interest in it, and then once they started telling me what they wanted me to change in the story, I just wasn't there, y'all. I had been in the military for 23 years, and I didn't want anybody telling me what to do. And I was like, I don't want to change my story. I want to print just like this. This is what I want to do. And so I started taking classes at the junior college on how do you self-publish a book? How do you get an author career off the ground? And I self-published that book for my husband's birthday, March 30th. 2015 that book came out. So 9 years later, 40-something books later. But
You're just seriously a role model. That's incredible. I'm sorry. I'm over here fangirling. I'm like, keep it together, Jessica. You talk about being a nurse practitioner and also a nurse practitioner, you can write prescriptions like a doctor. You have been to basically as much school as an MD or a DO. Am I correct? 9 years?
No, not that much, but I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly. Frankly, the medical practitioners that I've had who have been NPs, I have much more enjoyed being taken care of by them than by MDs, frankly.
Thank you for that.
But how difficult was the transition away from those 23 years of medical and military service to being an author. And was there any or one particular military event that you experienced that you said, I have to put that into a book?
So it wasn't a difficult transition for me because I was ready to do something different, right? I was very much that Amarie character. I'm like, I did this for 23 years. I loved it. When I retired, I worked part-time at a civilian pediatric practice. And the physician that I work with, he also owned the practice, and he kept trying to to bring me on full time. And I'm like, no, we discussed this. I have a contract. And he's like, yeah, I know, but you could do more. I said I could, but I'm not. So, and we just kept going back and forth. And you know what? I said to myself, you have the power, right? I was like, you know what? Here's my nice little letter of resignation. Yes. I am gonna write full time. Like I was awesome. At that point where I truly was ready to move in a new direction. Mm-hmm. And at the time I'm like, what do I need to learn? What do I need to do so that I can do this, with excellence, right? Mm-hmm. What do I need to do? And that's the path I set out on. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So, I was ready.
You were ready. Mm-hmm. And were there any experiences, serious or amusing, that you had in the military that you have put into your books?
I think, I get inspired by life. Like, everything around me inspires me. For example, the scene in the book with Adele and the cat, that came from our cat. Our cat going to the free vet clinic on base, right? She was going out in town. She had a relationship with her vet, but we were being cheap. And on base, they had reduced rates, so we took her to the new vet. She was not pleased, okay? She was not pleased. And neither were they, because when my husband went to go pick her up, he comes to get me from work. He's like, don't be alarmed. Her cage has stickers on it that says, dangerous animal, will bite, approach with caution. And I'm like, what happened at the vet? He said, everything. Everything happened at the vet.
Oh, my God. So, yeah.
Yeah, so, yes.
Oh, my
yes,
God.
there are real things that happen in real life that I spin and put in the book. But, yes, Adele is a version of our cat, Jade.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I am also the human too. As our vet terms my cat, a spicy cat.
Yes.
She had to be sedated one time. They were like, we're not dealing with this.
Yes.
I love this question. What is your favorite meal after you finish a book? Do you celebrate with a favorite dinner? Ooh,
I do.
Ooh, tell me.
I absolutely do. So my favorite meal is fried shrimp. After I finish a book, usually followed by something chocolate. Usually a piece of cake. That's all chocolate. Chocolate cake, chocolate icing, chocolate chips, all chocolate.
This is how I finish my next book. I think I'll just put a vision board with fried shrimp and chocolate cake and just be like that. Yeah. Yes. That's awesome. And so that's how you celebrate finishing a book. But once the book comes out, do you have a standard book release celebration, or do you do something different every time?
So yes, I do something different every time. This is the first time that I've had a book tour, so this is something new for me, and I'm very thankful for that. I'm very thankful that y'all are here with me to celebrate. But I usually stay up till midnight. On book release day. I want to be one of the first people to download the book and reread it, because I mean, you can probably relate to this as an author. Yeah. In some ways, you're writing your book in pieces, right? And so to see it all together as a finished product, it's really like a new experience. And you're like, I wrote that. Oh my gosh, I'm fabulous, right?
Yep. That is a real emotion. Yeah.
Right?
It's like I was describing it to a writing friend the other day of you've gone on a really arduous bike ride and then you're coasting downhill, the sun's setting. It's just there's a nice breeze. That's what rereading your book feels like when it's all done. Yeah.
Very much so.
Oh, awesome. Okay, here's a good question for some of the writers in the audience. do you publish books for others through your company? And, in case that's a no, which is valid, you've got a lot going on. What are some resources you would recommend to people who are pursuing either self-publishing or trade publishing?
Yeah. So I do not publish other people's books. Have I helped other people, like advise other people? Absolutely. Because it was done for me, right? Like I did not get here by myself. So I do my best to be a good resource, a good reference for other writers, other authors, film writers, whatever it is, like, because we're all creatives, right? So we're all creatives. So that's what I do. As far as resources, I think the best thing that you can do is be open, right? Be open to learning, because I write romance, but that doesn't mean that I can't learn from an author who writes horror, an author who writes thrillers, an author who writes women's fiction, right? There are so many elements that make a story rich and dynamic and appeal to readers. It takes all of that. And I would say read everything. Don't just read in your genre what you write. Be a student of the written word. Right? Read, process, take in words, because it's going to help you be a better storyteller, right? It's like we all tell stories every day, right? Like life is full of stories. You come in, you start talking to people, you're telling a story. But then you hear somebody say it a different way, and you go, oh, I'm going to incorporate that into my story, right? And so writing a book is the same way. You learn different things. And I will say that it's important to plug into the community. Writing can be very solitary. You spend a lot of time with people and characters and places that don't exist. But when you get ready to publish your book or sell your book, guess what you need? You need connection with other people. Right? Like everybody in this room, like we are connected through story, right? Or we wouldn't be here. So it's important that you come out of your bubble and connect with other people in your community and build networks and partnerships.
That's seriously solid advice. The community aspect, yeah, like, especially a lot of us as writers are, ambiverted or introverted to some extent, but, other writers are your people. Yes. So it's not as hard to, get up the gumption to talk to them.
Right. Yeah, writers, readers, booksellers, cover designers, book influencers, like they are your people, right? They are your people. They are part of your circle. And this is what I've learned is that there are people in the community that want to see you succeed. Like they want to support you. Let them help you.
Yeah. Is there a place, 41 books, is there a place where we can see a list of all your books in chronological order?
Yes. So if you go to my website, SieraLondonAuthor.com, you can see all my books out by the series. I think I have, this book will make like my 9th series. I think my series books, I tend to write series, even though you can read the books individually, what we call standalones, but I tend to write series.
Okay. Great. So SieraLondonAuthor.com.
Yes.
Okay. I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions.
Okay.
So let me see what we've got going on here. Oh, here's one while I look at the others. Will your books be put on audiobook for listening audiences, listening readers?
I hope so. I hope so. So that is totally up to the publisher. So that means y'all got to buy the print book and the ebook. So they go, you know what? We're selling enough of Siera's books that we also need to put it out in audio. So this is something about crossing over from being independently published where you control everything, because I want to say about 8 or 9 of my books that are in audiobooks that I've paid like a narrator to read and produce, right? I've paid that. But for a publisher, it's all about what? Books sold. Especially with the New York house, because they're not just looking at ebooks, they want what? They want print books to move off of the shelf. So it really is a print book game. So yes. Yeah, but I am hopeful.
Fingers crossed for
I'm
that.
believing it. I'm claiming it.
Audiobooks and a Netflix deal.
Yes.
That's what I'm
There
crossing
you go.
my fingers
yes,
for.
definitely Netflix. Yes.
All right. Right? Yeah, or Lifetime.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's just we're manifesting it into existence.
Yes.
Okay, no pressure on this question on the eve of Mother's Day with your mama sitting in the front row.
Yeah.
How did your childhood upbringing influence you to write?
Oh, that's a great question. So my mom is, she got a battle rhythm too, y'all. I'm just telling you, she's got a battle rhythm. But my mom is a huge proponent of learning. Like growing up, there really wasn't a time where my mom wasn't like in school or going for something, like achieving, moving to the next level. It's kind of like in her DNA. And in addition to raising me and my brother, there's two of us. And my dad is here too.
Hi, Dad.
Yeah, cousins. I got other family members in the audience. They back there. They're keeping their head down, but they're here. But I would say just my mom has a standard of excellence, and I don't know if there's really anything below that, right? Like my mom, I'm like, Mom, I had an A on my test. Well, you my child. Of course you did. Like that's her. That sounds just like her, right? Like, am I going to say, of course you did. As if there were any other option.
There are
no other options, So, yes. So,
That's awesome.
Very much.
And that obviously influenced, you weren't just like, I'm going to write a book and then self-publish it. You were like, I want to write a book, therefore I'm going to take a class on learning how to self-publish well.
Yes.
That's so smart. That's awesome. That's okay. Great answer. Great answer to a question to close us out, I think. I don't know how we're going to top that one. But I've really enjoyed being in conversation with you this afternoon. And I hope you guys have also just enjoyed being part of this.
Thank you.